Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Well, thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you.
We appreciate it.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Tony. Thank you.
Hi there. Hello all, and special invited guests too.
Yes.
You,
And
you.
and
Hi.
Bob, we're all set with I copied you. We're all set with police next week, Chief Furlong. And then on the 30th, it'll be Austin Antrim and fire.
I think
So
I'm unmuted now,
You are.
yeah, you're good.
right?
Yeah,
You
you're
are.
good.
Thank you.
So welcome.
My
You
speaker
find-
is not working. Please check your connection or use a different speaker. I have no idea what that means.
It's working fine, Tony. We can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, but Tony, can you hear us? Ah, all right. Well, we'll let him work on that for a minute.
I think I have it now.
So you can now hear us?
I can, Bob.
Excellent. Welcome. Welcome.
Well,
Snacks and coffee at the back of the room.
Can't see you though, Bob.
No, I've been sick all week and
Oh,
I'd rather not show my video right now.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
sorry to hear that. Yeah.
No, it's moving in the right direction now.
I saw you out one morning with the doggies for maybe a
Oh.
short walk, I think.
Yeah. Well, they have to get their walk at least around the block,
Yeah, right.
and it's good to get out.
I forget their names. They have cute names.
Oh, the dogs?
Yeah.
We have Gracie, we have Madeline,
I
not
knew it was an
Madeline,
M.
but Madeline,
Right.
which is apparently the Welsh spelling of Madeline, and Tiny Tim.
Yes, I knew they had cute names.
Bob, speaking of walking, I want to thank you as a neighbor for clearing the sidewalk up and down the block in the snowstorms.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I've done that for a while now.
I know you have, George told me, and it's very neighborly.
Well, I must say that you do clear yours, and it's a pleasure to not have to go all the way up to 40 steps now.
Well, that might stop George's little problem from too aggressive shoveling
Uh-oh.
recently, but we'll see.
Okay, well, I guess none of us are as young as we think we are.
That's the problem, right? We
I know.
certainly think we're younger.
Yeah,
Our
if any-
backs aren't as young. We're young, but it's our backs that have been.
But our heads haven't caught up with that, thankfully.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm not admitting I'm old yet.
Oh, no.
Right.
No admitting, just it's odd, right? Odd.
Right.
Right,
Judy,
yeah.
you look great. You're all summery.
Well, because I'm wintering in Florida.
Nice.
Oh,
Rub it in, why don't you?
I gotta
Yes.
tell you, I was born to be a snowbird. I had no idea, but now I know.
is
It's
it
my
nice?
calling.
Is it nice? Where are you?
Outside of Fort Myers, and it's glorious. It really
Oh.
is.
Our kids just got back from Miami and they said it was 80 and sunny every day.
It's somewhere between 70 and 80,
Yeah.
and it's phenomenal. I was born to be a snowbird. I'm glad I found
got
my
it.
calling.
I actually have to go to Fort Myers. My daughter will be graduating from Florida Gulf Coast in May.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
Oh, it's gonna be hot as-
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
she's the last one on the payroll, as we say.
Yay!
Yes,
Okay, that is cause for celebration.
Yes.
absolutely.
And the graduation festivities last like several weeks, if not months, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Until June at least.
And you can schedule a reunion of some kind in the winter.
Yeah. Oh,
You
there
know,
we go.
she's very, very smart to go to to have gone to school
Yes.
down here. Brilliant.
Yes.
A lot
Yes.
smarter than you give her credit for.
Uh-huh.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess let's get going here. So it is what? It is 7:01. And I believe we have a quorum. So present from the Finance Committee are, I'm just reading these in Zoom order, Bob Vanderslice, Barbara Beatty, Deborah Warren, Judy Zahora, Peter Barba, Dana Sheehan, Julie Tarmy is here, DeWitt Brown, Tony, not present from the Town Administrator, Tony Barletta. I thought I saw Dan.
Yep, he's there.
And McMacken as well. And from the public or as guests, Tony, I'm not sure, Tony P, exactly what your title
He's
is.
superintendent.
Superintendent of Schools.
All right, Superintendent of Schools. I saw Lauren Sherlock here, and Zoom keeps jumping around on me. Oh, Patty Karras as well.
Hello, everyone.
Patty and I are here from the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so shall we start with minutes?
Yes, I have the minutes from March 2nd. I sent you all an amended copy because I failed to list the members who were present, only the one who was absent, but this one should be complete.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes. Oh, I'll
Second,
second.
All right, Peter's motion and Barbara's second. And all in favor?
I,
Can we just do it with roll call?
Beatty, I,
Warren, I.
Warren, okay. Tarmy, I.
Barba, aye.
McMacken, aye.
And Vanderslice, aye. So,
Zahora abstain.
Right, and did we get Sheehan?
She and I.
Thank you.
Zahora has been working on the beach.
It's great.
you just look so relaxed and beautiful in your tank top, whole 9 yards.
I'm the
As
happiest
it-
employee.
As it's snowing all around us.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Listen,
and
guys.
we're not kidding about that, actually.
It
Boy.
is snowing.
So don't miss that.
Good for you.
Okay. Let's see, budget update, Tony B as in Barletta. Anything to report there? Allison took us through it in a pretty detailed fashion last week and also showed us kind of the ins and outs and what's out there on that shared drive as well.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Tony.
I just wanted to give an update on schedule. We talked to the printer and they said they need 10 working days plus another 5 days on top of that for the mailing. So if your book needs to be delivered 7 days in advance of the meeting, which is May 21st, that means it needs to be delivered by the 13th. Well, the 14th, but I'm saying the 13th for a weekday. That means 1, 2, 3. That means you need to, the 25th of April is your absolute last day that you could get your final book to them.
Okay.
So I just wanted to get, I'm sure Allison gave a great explanation of all the paperwork, of all the documents we provided you guys. I've met with a few of you in one-on-one meetings, since then. So I'm here for any questions. I'll listen in. But I did want to just give that update on the schedule.
Okay, and our schedule right now says book to printer on April 22nd.
Yeah, probably a better I mean, aim for that, but I think you're, like I said, 15 days before is basically 15 business days. So the 25th would be
He's,
your,
okay, he's
very,
counting
very-
business days. All right.
yep.
That's mighty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
it sneaks up on you, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you have
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks,
Wow.
a little bit less, a little bit, yeah.
Okay. So then, let's get cracking. Um, Barbara, you are liaison to school committee?
Yes, Deborah and I.
Okay, Deborah and Barbara. So maybe you want to introduce Tony and the school committee. And one thing I would note, Tony P, is we do have several new members. So you may want to ad lib a little bit
Yep.
about such things as net school spending, the special ed and what that implies, transportation, the contract with Swampscott, the more unusual stuff, just to give context to what you're talking about. And I'm gonna, Barbara, Deborah,
Yes.
the floor is yours to.
Barbara, go ahead and introduce Tony.
Okay,
You're the old hand.
it is my great pleasure to introduce Superintendent Tony Parentazzi. And Bob, the things you were talking about, those are in Tony's, we've seen Tony's presentation. And I sent it to all of you. So we're going to put it up on the screen, right? Can we do that, Bob? In just a second, after Tony's, said hi and everything.
Yeah,
And also, we're lucky to have with us Lauren Sherlock. And is it Patty Karras is here too?
Yes, I am. Hi,
Right.
Barbara.
Thank you. Hi. So 2 members of the school committee. And we had a very good visit, Tony. We had a great tour. And we've gone through and we've been coming to meetings. So you had a meeting last night. Didn't
We
you?
did.
Didn't make that one, sorry.
Well, that's okay. Thank you so much for everything you've been doing, all the hard work you've been doing on your end.
Our pleasure. So, Tony, turning it over to you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Barbara. With your permission, I will defer to the Vice Chair, Patty Karras, for an introduction. And are we going to be able to put the PowerPoint up on the screen for all the members?
Yeah,
Bob?
you should. If you kind of wiggle your mouse around the middle of the screen, you should get a thing that pops up at the bottom, like a menu bar kind of a thing. Yeah. And you're looking for, on my screen, you're looking for an icon that looks like a square with an arrow pointing upwards. And
There you go.
you got it.
Yep.
Well, not quite yet. Let's see if I can.
There you go.
Great.
Looks like you got it.
Well, your optimism hopefully is it rolling when I've moved? Is that
Yes.
move?
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
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 Okay, so Patty, it's yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tony. We are here tonight to present the fiscal year 2023 Nahant Public School budget. The budget was developed over several months. We started back in November and we finalized it in February. It was unanimously approved by the school committee on February 15th, which was the date of the public meeting. And I believe it was attended by Barbara. So having introduced the budget, I'll give it back to Tony to walk us through it.
Thank you very much. For those of you who are new, we have 5 school committee members duly elected. And I do want to just take a little detour and thank the Finance Committee for allowing 2 of your members to be our liaisons this year. That is different. And I think it was very helpful for me personally, and I think for the school committee. And I think your 2 liaisons, Deborah and Barbara, became very familiar with the process. And of course, touring the school, got a firsthand indication of the expenditure validation of the budget. So thank you for that. I'm going to be very rudimentary. Please, any member of the committee who wants to stop me and ask for an explanation, please do so. First of all, the budget is divided into many line items, and I believe Barbara and Deborah have shared the line item budget with you. And I, of course, have shared it with the school committee on multiple occasions, and of course with Mr. Barletta and Allison, the town accountant. It is divided into 3 sections, and this has been, ever since I've been superintendent, this is the way it's been done. I believe that was based on the previous town accountant and town administrator's request that there would be a section for the Johnson School expenditures, a section for the district expenditures, and a section for the town expenditures. And I'm going to explain each as we go through. So the increase in the budget approved by the school committee is $111,394. That represents a 2.62% increase. The factors that are involved in the increase are significant costs, like all of us are having, for supplies and materials, obviously utilities, all salary increases. And I will talk at greater length about this later when we start talking about the details. We have 2 grade 2 sections, but that's budget neutral because this year we have 2 grade 1 sections. We have a bubble moving through the district, and it looks like it may be 2 more years before we get a second bubble. But we have 2 sections next year of 2nd grade, currently 2 sections of 1st grade, and then of course 1 section in every other grade. We do have 2 pre-K teachers, but those sections are very small because of the ages of the students, and that is self-funded. The pre-K program is not represented in the school budget. That's a pay-as-you-go program. We have a 5-year contract with Swampscott for our 7th through 12th grade students that will increase 2.5% per year. That was 5 years ago. I negotiated that at the request of the town administrator and the FinCom at that time, because in the several years before that negotiations, the Swampscott tuition cost was vacillating dramatically because it was a per pupil cost. So we negotiated a 5-year contract for transition, which escalated from a 2.5 to a 4% increase to get the cost in line with the real cost for Swampscott. And now for the next 5 years, that increase will be 2.5% per year. A good example of that and why this is better for everyone is that we have had 6 students join the 7th through 12th grade sections since the beginning of school. In years past, that would have given the town of Nahant an unforeseen increase in costs. And now, of course, it does not. Obviously, this includes all of our COVID-19 supplies and health and safety issues that are not being paid for by grants. It includes the Essex North Shore tuition for our students going to the Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical High School. Special education, which includes special education here, our tuition students, and special education transportation, and hardware replacement. During the COVID-19 time period before we opened up, we gave hardware to our students at home so that they could be remote. And as expected, some of those items came back somewhat used, and so we have to replace them. So the three areas, as you see, the Johnson School budget is going up $32,000, the district budget $53,000, and the town budget $25,000, which adds up to the total of $111,394. So the Johnson School budget, I always do first because that's easy, obviously the easiest one to understand, because everything we spend here in the Johnson School is in this budget. The updated salaries need to be explained because we do not have union contracts for fiscal 23. The teachers and paraprofessionals contracts are projected. The school committee is very much aware of how much is in the budget, and we are negotiating and we should have the teacher's contract settled within the time frame between now and town meeting. I'm not sure that we'll have the paraprofessionals contract settled, but that's a smaller contract, both in number and in dollars. And there should be enough money in this budget to cover it. As I said, we have 2 second grades, but we're reducing our 2 first grades to 1 for next year, and that's due to the projected enrollment. This budget has a reduction in the electric costs. The first phase of the LED project, funded by the green communities that we've been working on for 4.5 years, has finally taken place. So 1/2 of our school has the newest LED fixtures and lighting. And in the first 2 months since the project was completed, we saw about a 12% reduction. We also had weather stripping done to all of the exterior doors as part of that project, and we're hoping to see a reduction in our gas costs. The Johnson School budget includes educational supplies and materials, building maintenance supplies. We are educating our staff in the John Collins writing program. Henry Dombrowski, who's a pretty well-known trainer who lives in Swampscott, is our trainer. We purchased a music curriculum, or we will purchase a music curriculum, social studies material, and as I mentioned before, the technology replacements. So the total change increase is $32,949, and that represents approximately 30% of the $111,000 increase. The district is a little fuzzier. District costs include the Swampscott tuition increase, the school committee cost, the superintendent's office costs, and tuitions to outside schools, typically called out-of-district schools. So those costs are going up $53,261. As you can see, the vast percentage of that is the $39,198 for the 2.5% Swampscott tuition increase. That number represents 35.2% of the entire $111,000 increase. And the district increase is about half of the total $111,000. The town costs, and by the way, these have all been consistent since I've been here and were established by the school committee and by the town administration. The town costs include transportation, both general education and special education, and the Essex tuition. These costs are basically uncontrollable by the school district, which is one of the reasons they are separated out. The Essex tuition cost is a year in arrears. So the number of pupils that were there in fiscal 22 dictate the cost in fiscal 23. And that's a very standard procedure for tuitions to collaboratives or to other large organizations that take pupils. And the reason for that is stability. You don't want, again, if two pupils leave and three pupils come in, you don't want to keep doing that paperwork. So it's done based on the October 1st number. And I've reported to the town accountant that we already have one student this year who has returned to Swampscott. And of course, the way the Swampscott tuition is set up, there's no increased cost. So next year, that student won't be counted in the Essex cost. And the $25,000 for the town changes are 22.6% of the entire $111,000 cost. Now that's a lot of words. And for me, it always helps to see things objectively. So this shows the three costs. It shows the net school spending number, and the net school spending number is a state number that's devised that what we should be spending for education, and the town of Nahant is in excess of the minimum net school spending requirement. And so there's absolutely no issue with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So this shows you that the Johnson School number for next year will increase, as I've already given you the whole number, by 1.9%. The district will go up 2.4% for a net school increase of 2.2%, and the town's portion will be going up 6.1%. I do want to explain why that number is adjusted. Last year, when we built the budget, between the time the budget was built and town meeting, we had one more student go to Essex, so that number changed. So the entire education budget is going to be going up, as we've seen on the slide earlier, $111,394, or 2.62%. So that gives you a year to year. I think it also helps the finance committee, because I know you like to see things over time. This shows you 2019 to 2023. We've had a very good fiscal run. So the average increase over those 5 years has been 2.64%. Basically, inflation. And the way I have been able to do that and manage that is that we have had some veteran teachers leave us, both by retirement and by taking jobs in other school districts. One, for example, moved to the Cape and is now working in one of the previous districts that I was superintendent in Dennis Yarmouth. And I take that and what in education we use the word breakage. So somebody's an $85,000 employee, they're replaced by a $45,000 employee, and the difference is called breakage. I always apply that to the budget. And that is why we have been able to really build free cash over the last few years. And we hopefully will be able to continue doing that. But this basically shows you that our increases over time have been very reasonable. We have worked on the building. The gym has a new floor. We've improved the HVAC system while retaining the increase in the percentage growth at a very reasonable number. Now, one thing I do want you to know, and this is a little different for me, but this usually happens later in the process. The school committee approved the number you see in the bottom right, 4,357,564. Your numbers will show 4,357,568. And the reason for that $4 difference is that the software package used by Town Hall takes each of our line items and it uses a system that takes all the cents out. It rounds to the nearest dollar. The software system we use doesn't do that. The school committee does not have to revote the budget. And the reason for that is that as long as the town provides at least the amount of money that the school committee voted, it's fine, it's legal. And I've talked to both the school committee and to the town accountant, and everyone agrees to just leave it the way it is.
Tony, this is Dana Sheehan. I was wondering if I could ask a question about the capital improvements. You talked
Sure.
about the changes to the HVAC system and what grants were you able to use there, and any plans going forward to work on improving the air filtration?
Sure. Thank you. The first understanding that is really important is that we do not have a closed building. Every room in our building that has children in it, and almost every room that has an office, has opening windows. And our primary, and the vast percentage of our building is not air conditioned and has what's known as a univac. Every univac has an outdoor airflow system through the walls of the building. So when you drive by the building, you'll see about every 40 feet, you'll see vents at the bottom of the rooms. So that system brings in fresh air consistently. So what we've done with grants is we have purchased fans for every room to move the air around. We have purchased air purifiers for every room and multiple ones for the large room like the cafeteria. We have upgraded our filters on all of our air exchange systems and our univacs so that they filter a smaller micron sized particle, which was recommended. We purchased enough sanitizer, both hand sanitizer and air sanitizer. And we also purchased 2 machines to fog the building. Now, in the course of the COVID-19 research, it has been found that that fogging isn't necessary because, as we all know now, the transmission is person to person as compared to what we thought initially it was person to object to person. But they're the things we've done. In addition, that during the first year, we kept our windows cracked all the time. And then again, we found out that that wasn't necessary because we're exchanging the air quite rapidly. The real concern about air quality with COVID-19 and also other infectious diseases is in a hermetically sealed building where the air has to be exchanged mechanically. Whereas, I'm looking in my office and, if I look past my computer, there's 2 huge windows that open facing my desk. And we all have that advantage, that we have the advantage of fresh air. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Tony, that's, sounds a really good approach, and you can tell you've really been working on this issue for quite some time. And it seems like we're prepared for the future, if we have more problems with pandemics.
Yeah.
Just A follow-up question on the air purification systems or units that you purchased. Was there background investigation, like are these HEPA units or, you know, more simplified air purification units?
These are units that actually Tony Barletta did the research on and added our facility to the ones that he purchased for the town. And I know they are good units. I don't know the technical
Yeah,
because
they're HEPA filters, Peter.
Okay, thank you.
I think I think they also have ultraviolet.
Yes, probably.
Yeah.
And do we have, I know those, I'm in the building management business, so I know those filters are pretty costly and sometimes hard to get. So is that something that's built into the budget as well, the increased cost in those filters?
Yes, we buy those in bulk and we buy them from a low bidder, but a low bidder in this case doesn't mean inexpensive filters.
Right.
It means competitive.
Correct.
And we buy literally hundreds of them at a time because each room takes 2. Plus we have the overhead air exchangers, which one of those units takes as many as 5 at a time, and we replace them quarterly.
Excellent. I have a question related to Swampscott tuition. So full disclosure, I sat on the school committee several years ago. And at that time we had basically we were paying the per pupil cost to Swampscott. How is your agreement line up with that per pupil cost? I know we varied every year because obviously students come at our numbers change every year, and that's I'm sure why you're trying to get away from that. But I'm curious how you know, where if you were to divide up that contract, where do we fall as far as the per pupil cost?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. In the first 5-year contract, our per pupil cost dramatically escalated. And that was because the members of the school committee and I, who were on that negotiating team with the members of the school committee from Swampscott, recognized the fact that we were actually getting the education of our children per pupil much lower than the Swampscott was paying for their own children. Now, we're still lower than them, but the difference has really shrunken. So we, you know, the last year of that first 5-year contract, our costs went up 4%. That's healthy. So it went from about 1.2 million to about 1.5 million in 5 years. But now it's stabilized at 2.5% a year for the next 5 years. So we bit the bullet. Globally, I would say that we're getting a very reasonable per pupil cost. As an example, it's lower than our elementary cost, and it's secondary education. And the reason for that is obvious, because when you add 120 kids to a high school that has 1,000, you don't, our 120 kids, they still have the same amount of counselors, and phys ed teachers, and art teachers. So there are certain costs that don't elevate.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
This is Bob Vanderslice. I'm going to throw 3 questions at you. You can answer them in whatever order you choose. First, how are you going to spend that $4? Second is kind of like, where can this go off the rails? And what, in particular, what inflation assumptions are built into this? What happens if we do find ourselves facing 5 or 7 or higher % inflation? can we still accommodate that in the budget? And then the third, and actually only the second real serious question, capital expenditures looking forward, what do you see in the next 5 years as major expenditures?
Okay, let's take the first one. $4. By the time July rolls around, I probably won't be able to buy a cup of coffee, so it'll have to be a cup of tea. Uh, it can go off the rails in the same way every school budget goes off the rails. Unforeseen expenses, and the ones we cannot control at all are the special education. For those of you who are new, and I know Peter knows this because of his years on the school committee, the cost of special education is determined by an individual education plan meeting. It's a group of educators sitting around with sometimes advocates, but definitely with parents and guardians, talking about, the test results, how a child is doing in school, what special supports a child may need or could need. And then an individual education plan is drawn up. I can't get involved until that plan is signed. If I do, it's an ethics violation, and I would be reported to the Ethics Commission as inappropriately in putting myself in that process. So the big fear for all superintendents, and this is my fourth school district, is during the course of a year, a significant number, now that would be in a bigger district, but in this district, one student moves into town who's significantly disabled and handicapped, needs to go to a private institution, needs a specialized transportation, and there are children who need a nurse to accompany them on that van. A child like that could be a $500,000 a year child. That's a budget buster. Even in a big district like Lynn, if you get 5 or 6 of those, you have a problem. We've been lucky. Our special education director and I and the principal and the teachers have worked very hard to bring students back to our district who were 5 years ago out in specialized out-of-district placements. Right now, we have, and let me throw another factor in, and we work very closely with Swampscott because they have programs that we don't have, and the cost of our special education students in Swampscott is much lower per pupil than it would be if they were going to another district or a private school. So
Excuse me just a second. I just want to just jump in that in no way or in every way are we still supporting the students' needs. So it's, and certainly we want to be fiscally responsible, but we want to be really clear that we are also being responsible to the child.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. We have I'll just tell you where our students are who are not in the district. And this, of course, is K-12. We have students in Swampscott in their specialized programs. We have students in Marblehead, and we have students at the Northeastern Collaborative in both Peabody and in Beverly. And so that's a budget buster. And I think I want to totally agree with Judy. It's not about saving money. It's about getting the best education for the money you spend. That's what it's all about. For example, I can give you a concrete example. We had a student who was going to the landmark school, and when our special education director went there, found that the student was not doing that well. We met with the parents. I didn't, but they met with the parents. And over a couple of meetings, the parents decided to give Swampscott High School a try. Much happier. And in their opinions, a better education at a lower expenditure. But it wasn't about the money. What triggered it was the special education director, when she went to the meetings, she wasn't happy with what was going on there. And that's a concrete example.
When does the, I'm remembering my days back on the school committee, but there is a circuit breaker as far as when those expenditures get so high that the state actually kicks in, if I remember correctly?
Yes. So the circuit breaker currently is, and I'm going to round because every year the numbers change. If you spend more than 1.5 times approximately $44,000 per student, the state will kick in approximately 75% of the difference. So if you had a $100,000 student, you take 45 times 1.5, and they would give you approximately $30,000. Transportation was not counted until last year, so we will get some money this year. Now, there's a good news, bad news. The good news is that we have very few students who would get a significant amount of money from the circuit breaker. I believe our circuit breaker check this year will total $26,000. Now, that's really low. When I got here, it was almost 100. But it means that we don't have a lot of high-cost students out in other districts. So that's the good news.
Thank you.
And that's money,
Can I-
that money is used to provide special education services.
And may I add something so that in case I used to teach education policy, what happened was that the federal government passed the Education for All Handicapped Children Act.
Right.
And then the individual education was the IDEA, right? So the federal government has passed and then continues to refine and add to an act that guarantees what's called a FAPE, a full and appropriate public education, and in the least restrictive environment. And that means public school classrooms, and that you plan the best possible by full and appropriate. What the federal government did not do, and you actually hear this discussed sometimes in federal budget discussions, there'll be somebody will say that, and maybe it's somebody who has a child where they're thinking about this, and I wish more people would think about it. What the federal government did, and this is so classic, and I'm just saying the history of it. I'm not, okay? They passed the law without the funding.
That's right.
And so they passed a wonderful law that really does what Judy's saying, that really does look very carefully at the full and appropriate public education for every child. And that money is not supposed to be the issue. It's through these individual education conference meetings where the parents and the professionals, and they can have a lawyer, all of that. And there's a large special education bar who are lawyers who specialize exclusively in the special education cases. So it's based on that individual evaluation, but the problem for local districts was that it was passed, and initially when the law was designed, the idea was that the federal government was going to be really funding it.
Hey, Barbara, do Do you remember how long this battle's been going on? Because I've been involved in it since day one.
Me too. When
19
chapter
Nin-
766 came in.
That's right, 1974.
Exactly. 74. And the Massachusetts chapter 766 was the model for
That's
the
right.
federal program, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. But exactly, it was designed and passed with very good thoughts about what children needed. But then the federal government did something that I know you're shocked to hear me say this. Sometimes they pass laws and don't fund them or don't fund them at the level to actually do the full funding for what the law requires. So that's what happened. And so school districts, as Tony is explaining to you, it's out of his control because it's a federal law, but it doesn't have the flow through funding that it does to support it. Does that help? That's the basic funding situation and policy situation. And, you know, that's how the law happened. Yes, Tony, I was there too, I remember.
Thanks, Barbara. Appreciate that. Hey, Tony.
So the last thing was capital expenditures.
Yes, please.
And the big one is the roof of the gymnasium. When the building was renovated in 2007, for some reason, the roof of the gym was not replaced. I don't know how old it is, but it looks like it's about 30 to 40 years old. It could even be older. So tomorrow, actually, I'm meeting with a consultant because we have to devise a scope and sequence. We probably will be required to put external insulation boards on the roof. The insulation on the gym roof probably doesn't meet current standards. And that will take the roof replacement into, my estimate is to $200,000 to $300,000 range. The interesting thing is right now we have a really old-fashioned roof. It's a rolled roof that's been tarred and it doesn't leak. I mean, it looks like garbage, but it doesn't leak. So that's one of the reasons I want a consultant to look at it, because we want to push it off as far as we can without it leaking. That's the goal. Which means because we're probably going to have to get insulation, and it's probably going to be in the $200,000 to $300,000 range and of course, everything, as we all know, the materials, the escalation is scary. It will become an MSBA project. We are not a high need community, and therefore the amount of money from MSBA is probably going to be in the neighborhood of 30%. That sounds good. The problem is because of their rigid requirements, everything will cost more. So a concrete example for you is we will have to hire an owner's project manager, commonly called an OPM, which we probably don't need for a roof replacement, but we're going to have one because the MSBA guidelines require one. So that alone will probably put $25,000 on top.
Tony, I have a question on that then. Is it less money to not accept their money?
Well, let's look at it this way. If it's a $300,000 project and we get 30%, that's enough money. It's $90,000. I don't think it's going to add $90,000. If it were just a roof project and it was $100,000, we have to, and Tony Barlett and I have already talked about this, then we have to think about it.
Tony, I have a question. Forgive me if you just mentioned this. How much will the consultation cost, roughly?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, how much do you expect the consultation fee to be?
I don't know yet. I'm guessing somewhere between 5 and 15,000, because it's not just consultation. I can't go forward with a project of this magnitude if I don't have what's called a scope and sequence. You know, it's plans. As a matter of fact, right here against my wall, I have the original plans from 2007 of the roofs that they'll take and they'll look at. I'll give you a concrete example of one of the things that'll be in a scope and sequence. It'll say the square footage of the roof, the pitch of the roof, the depth of the insulation, how it's attached. But it'll also say something like this. If when the roof is removed, there are places of the roof membrane, below the membrane, the structure itself, that have to be replaced. This is the cost per square foot of that replacement. And what that does is it protects the owner, us, from somebody saying, yeah, I'll give you the roof for $100,000, and then they find $250,000 worth of damage.
You said
The
that
good
you
news
worked
is it hasn't leaked. And if it hasn't leaked, hopefully the under,
Yeah.
you know, is not, has too much damage.
I
And
agree.
Tony, you said that this was a consultant that you've worked with before.
Yes. Yeah, this is, it's Gale Associates. They are the number one, and I'm going to use a weird word. They're the number one envelope experts in New England. And that would be, if you think of a house, everything on the outside, windows, walls, roofs. That's all they do.
I've worked with them before and they're very, very reputable. So
Yep.
good selection.
Thank you.
Okay. More questions for Tony?
Yes, I have one, Dana. Tony, could you just a little more detail on the contract negotiations? I mean, we can expect, like what we can expect in terms of increase, and how long are the term of the contract?
The term of the contract will be the first day of September 2022 to the last day of August 2025. And I don't want to be considered to be avoiding an answer, but because we're in the middle of contract negotiations, I don't feel comfortable talking about percentages or details of the negotiations. I can tell you this, that if we had negotiated last year, we'd be in a much stronger position than this year, because as you all know, everything, the cost of everything has exploded. And when you're an employee and you're looking at 3 years down the road, you're concerned about that. But we have presented a history of their increases versus communities like us, around us, and we are very close. I would say that we're within 0.75% globally, and I don't mean per year, I mean globally for 3 years. The school committee is getting some things that are very important to them in terms of professional development, in terms of communication with parents and guardians. And I'm going to stop there.
Okay, that's a good description. I appreciate that, Tony. One more thing, one more question, if I could, before we move on. What part of this budget is relies on grants going forward? So, for example, if a grant didn't come in, would it hurt this year's budget?
No.
Okay.
No. What I try to do with my budget building is I try to build a budget with, first of all, using that breakage, keeping the increase low, but build a budget that has enough in it that we make it through the fiscal year with I'm going to use a phrase that I like, with unexpended funds, because I don't like to use surplus. And those go back to the town. And the one thing we're real proud of, the school committee has monitored this very well. We don't spend money at the end of a fiscal year because we have it. We understand that the town has been very good to us, very generous. The FinCom has supported our budget unanimously every year I've been here. So if we have funds that for some reason we don't have to expend, that goes into free cash for the town because the town has lots of needs.
If you don't mind, I'll just say that I've been very impressed with how Mr. Parentazzi and with his collaboration with Mr. Andrews, our principal, have made sure that the funds that we have invested in the school have been meaningful. And in working with the educators, they've chosen to select programs that really help the teachers and the academic leadership make sure that we are reaching academic targets for our students with continuous improvement. And so, we have things like the MCAS that come through each year, but don't necessarily always fully help educate. Well, I'm sure it's very helpful. I'm not an educator, so I'm speaking a little bit out of turn, but it's one way to measure progress and achievement, but they make sure that we're also using other measures as well. And really, I've been very impressed with their selections. And the teachers have a committee that assist with making sure that our materials are the best and up to date. And Mr. Parentazzi has been very careful at planning that out and making sure that if our math is up to date one year, our ELA is right behind it. And so I've been nothing but impressed. And also when people are asking about grants, Mr. Parentazzi has also been very creative and proactive about making sure that we're taking advantage of whatever we can to minimize the cost for our district, which has been very helpful over time. I think that hopefully the evidence there is that, as he alluded to, we do try to give back to the town every year at every opportunity, because we're a community all together here. One doesn't succeed without the other, and we recognize that.
I would like to add that in our discussions, and I'm sure Deborah will agree with me, and attending school committee meetings, we've been very impressed with how you've dealt with COVID. You developed a very careful tracking system. You gathered, and it was a lot of extra work, and you put the time into it, and it was very sophisticated in terms of getting all the information, but making sure parents, right, Lauren, making sure that parents knew what was happening all the time, and testing and all kinds of stuff. So I know that Deborah would agree with me. We were very impressed, and at every meeting you would present a lot of detailed information about numbers and for trajectories, and it was very helpful. And I'm sure, Lauren, you could speak to this. It must have made parents have confidence that the school was really being as careful as possible.
I certainly hope so. I think there was a lot of work that went into it for sure to protect and inform people at every opportunity.
But also with privacy. So yes. You balanced all the.
Right. That's a big challenge. So yes, hopefully with that balance. And we were very proud and very happy to have been able to offer in-person learning to our students throughout all of last year, which was enormous. So our staff worked really hard, and our academic leadership, and our superintendent and our principal worked very hard to make that a safe possibility. And it was, and that was amazing. So that was quite a big undertaking. And thank you, Mr. Parentazzi, and thank you, Mr. Andrews. And we all worked hard on that.
Yeah, I would be remiss if because you're the finance committee of the town, if I did not mention Deb Murphy, the public health nurse who was I meet with her every week, and our school nurse, Mrs. Delicio, Cheryl Delicio. They worked as a team, and then I know during the course of COVID, there are a couple other nurses that I don't know as well, but it really worked well. We were one of the 8% of the schools that when we opened in September of 2000, we stayed open. And you're right, it was a lot of monitoring. I was blessed with 3 medical people on the school committee. 3 of our school committee members, including Mrs. Sherlock, earn their livings in the medical field. So, I was getting expert advice from my school committee. I mean, everyone else was relying on Dr. Fauci. So it really helped.
We were actually celebrating last night at our school committee meeting the fact that our focus was able to shift in our discussions a little bit away from COVID this time,
Yeah.
and a little bit more on academic achievement again. And it just felt so good. So that was great too. But we've always focused on it. Don't get me wrong. Academic achievement's always there. But I think we all know that COVID's dominated a lot of conversations in life for everyone over the past couple of years. So it felt nice to be able to really hone in on that a bit more last night. It's good.
That's actually one of the wonderful things about Nahant, that we've got talented people who are willing to step up and do this kind of thing. So thank you. All right, other questions from the committee or from public? No, then I think we are going. Go ahead, Dana.
So if nobody else wants one, I don't want to ask questions, but any thoughts on using the ARPA funds for the roof? There is some available, and it might make sense to get it now while we have it.
I'm not sure a roof would qualify for those funds, but I'll look into it. Typically, when you put a roof on a school, you go through the Massachusetts School Building Authority first. And if there are funds that can negate, there's 2 ways of looking at it. If something costs $100 and they're going to give you 30, what you don't want to do is reduce the 100 by a grant so they give you less than 30. You want to get their 30 first and then get the grant. Because any other source of revenue that you have that comes from any place, and it doesn't even have to be public money, it could be private money, they want to take it off the top and give you less. And, they're in the business of maintaining hundreds of schools. I mean, it makes sense that they do it that way, but you have to be very careful.
Okay, it's good until 2024, so the ARPA funds. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Tony. Thank you, school committee. Our next topic is pandemic relief. And I didn't check with you guys ahead of time, but DeWitt and Dana said they were working on something. Are you prepared to? And if not, we'll defer to a later meeting.
So Bill and I met with Tony and Allison about the ARPA funds available. And
Just for, at least for me and maybe others, what does ARPA stand for?
American Rescue Plan Act.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
You're
And I'll
welcome.
just give a high level brief on what Bill and I talked to Tony and Allison about. There's about $1,050,000 that was part of the allocation in ARPA funds for Nahant. And so far about 461,000 has been spent. And that's approved by the Board of Selectmen. There's a plan, we're looking for a plan for the remaining 589,000 in funds, and that's kind of a very fluid situation, and it's hasn't been decided yet. Some of the funds will be spent for a new fire truck. Half of the funds for a new fire truck would come from ARPA funds. And so that was our discussion. And Bill, if you have anything you want to add to that? Or Tony or Allison, so.
I'm happy to add to it if the committee would like me to.
Yes, please.
So for the most part, we've been using ARPA funds for public health related expenses, whether that be payroll or capital needs. So like, for instance, the air purifiers that Tony Parent spoke about, use ARPA funds for that. Payroll for all of our health nurses, any costs associated with tracing or tracking, cell phone services, website services, purchase of at-home test kits, a number of things, PPE for the fire department, for the police department. We purchased a power stretcher for our ambulance at the fire station. So a number of different things that we've spent so far. As of February 8th, the total expenditure is $320,000. As Dana had mentioned, part of the plan capital moving forward, we have a need for a new fire truck. Allison and I, our preliminary proposal was we could cut the borrowing of that in half by paying for half of it out of ARPA funds, which is a little expense, but we're reaching out to our financial advisors to get a little bit of a better cost estimate on interest rates and borrowing, and if it makes sense to do that, if it makes sense to borrow more. So that's still kind of up in the air. It might not be exactly that.
Right. So like, as a practical matter, what is the impact on this year's budget?
Well, this year's budget, we have, as Allison, I think, explained to you at the last meeting, we have a tremendous amount of free cash. And then on top of that, we have, the ARPA funds that, can be used somewhat like, should be used in the similar manner as free cash, one-time expense, things of that nature. They don't expire until 2024. They don't require town meeting vote, voted on by the Board of Selectmen. So we certainly don't want to use all of it this year. We want to hold on to some and continue to, we don't know what the pandemic might bring next winter. Certainly we hope that we're on the other side of this thing, but so we want to definitely leave ourselves a safety net. And we have, based on capital needs, kind of looked at where could we potentially, supplement with ARPA funds for those capital needs.
My understanding, Tony, was that the ARPA funds had to be somewhat related to COVID.
There's, so under ARPA, there's a extremely large amount of guidelines that have changed pretty frequently as to what you can and can't spend it on. There is no one agency or one staff that you can call and get approval for ahead of time. They basically just, they look at the guidance and go off of that. That guidance is expansive. It's not just public health or related items, public safety, and a number of other things. However, there's an element in the most recent guidance that came out that communities can, regardless of whether they saw a $10 million loss of revenue caused by COVID, can claim up to a $10 million loss of revenue and then use that money for basically like free cash. It's very, very flexible under that tool. We only got $1 million. Our neighbor, some towns got 30, 40, 50, $70 million. So for us, I mean, we essentially could use all of our funds under that more guidance by claiming it as a revenue loss.
I mean, still $1 million is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be mad if it fell out of our pocket.
It's good. It's just that we have to pay for things up front, and then we have to go and report them. And there's no check ahead of time. There's nobody that says, okay, that's an expense that's eligible. Go ahead and spend the money. So that's a little nerve-wracking. Number one. Number two, it's based on population. But they, so for a fire truck, costs $700,000 to the town of Nahant. It also costs $700,000 to the town of Lynn. I mean, the city of Lynn. But Lynn got 70 million. We got $1 million. So, it doesn't. It's a little bit tougher for us to figure out how we want to spend these funds. What Allison and I, with talking to our financial advisors, is try to focus on things that you get the most value for that dollar, and things that don't have other good funding sources. So for instance, sewer, you have the SRF program, long-term low interest loan. Water, you have MWRA program, zero interest. As Tony mentioned with the school roof, which we did go through this process of asking department heads, about HVAC, other capital needs, and seeing if it was something eligible for ARPA. You have that MSBA program that might be a more valuable funding mechanism. So we have to be a little bit more careful with how we spend every dollar compared to a town or a city that got a lot more.
To that point, is there some clarity on our ability to retain any of those ARPA funds in the reserve fund?
We cannot. There is clarity, and the answer is no. We cannot. We cannot use ARPA funds to pay down debt or to build reserves.
They're spent. They have to be spent.
So, I mean, because of our influx of free cash and because of these ARPA funds, we're able to, instead of, borrowing for certain things, we're able to pay for them outright or cut down the amount we borrow for this year.
Are they available to be appropriated by town meeting?
No, it does not require that. It says in the law very clearly that the authorization is to the Board of Selectmen in a town and city council in a city.
Okay. All right.
Would we still make recommendations though? I mean, if the selectmen choose to, I don't know, buy everybody in town a new car, and we don't think that's a prudent thing to do, do we have any say in it at all, or any
Depends on
guidance?
the kind of car you're gonna.
Yeah.
If it's electric, I mean, wouldn't you be appreciative of that at the moment?
Yeah.
No, I by the rule of the legislation of the act,
All right.
no. The answer is no. But there's no reason why, you guys can't make recommendations, or, we could go through a review process, but technically, no, there's no spot in there laid out in the act for a local finance committee.
If the selectmen want to spend the money on a particular project, whatever it is, new cars or new fire engines, does that have to be appropriated?
No.
No. Interesting.
Well, yeah, but we have, if they're using, I think as I heard earlier, they're looking to take half of the money or some of the money towards purchasing a $750,000 fire truck. If we had $750,000 out of ARPA, then selectmen could probably say, go buy the fire truck.
Right.
If they're taking some other money, if we have to take out a loan or some other thing, we now have that control to be able to say, you can buy a fire truck, but you can only spend the ARPA money doing it because we don't believe, we need a fire truck. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the borrowing part of that purchase does come before you.
Right.
Or the use of free cash does come before you. I mean, I know you were using that as a hypothetical, but like when we're looking at the fire truck, we've actually been lucky to not have, the 3 trucks that we have, 2 of them are basically brand new, both been completely funded by grants. So, for a small town, for a $750,000 capital expenditure to not have spent any dollars on that twice now, that's a big victory for us. And that's mostly due to our current fire chief going after those grants. When we look at this and we have this extra money, but again, trying to be careful about how we spread it out effectively. We're looking, hey, maybe we cut down the amount we borrow on that for that fire truck by using some ARPA funds to cut down the cost of the borrowing. But what I'm asking our financial advisors is, what's the interest rate on half? If I'm only saving like 10 grand by paying for half of it out of ARPA, $325,000, is it worth it? Or should we just borrow the full amount, pay the 10 grand, the extra 10 grand in interest, and have the 325,000 of ARPA to be used towards any other types of expenses that we might have? So that's the analysis we're kind of looking at right now.
So earlier, Tony P., the superintendent, mentioned getting an assessment of the roof. It could be 15 or 20 grand. Would we be able to use ARPA funds to do that? And I know, Tony, we had at some point you had mentioned the pump house on Ward Road. Would spending the ARPA money to get assessments of that, a written assessment or maybe design dollars, would that help?
So the assessment for Ward Road Pump House is complete.
Oh, okay.
We
And
just
do we
got
have a
that
design?
completed.
A new
No,
design?
nope. Nope, we just got an assessment of what's needed there for repairs. And we had existing sewer funds to pay for that. It's in such critical repair, wasn't something we could really wait on. But yeah, we could use some funds for the consultant costs associated. Unless, I mean, Allison would probably double check the guidance and make sure it clears that, but I think we could probably use some money for the consultant cost. If it makes sense, I would sit down with Tony P and try to understand how that impacts the MSBA grant and if that makes sense for the town to go that road.
Right.
But eligibility wise, I think, yeah, it would be eligible for that.
In terms of eligibility, it would also be available for water projects and infrastructure from ARPA funds.
It would, but we have MWRA 0 interest loan. And,
Yeah.
you know, when piping and the cost of those projects are so expensive and we only have $600 something thousand left, you know, the dollar doesn't travel as far for pipes for that type of expense.
Bob, this is Tony Parentazzi. If I could just insert about this conversation, because Peter and Tony are talking about an example, which is exactly what I was talking about. If you use funds to pay for the design and the evaluation of the roof, then MSBA will take that cost off of the cost of the project and will lose 30% of it. So that's exactly, it was a perfect example of what I was talking about.
Great. Yeah. So we have $600,000 that we want to spend. We don't know what we want to spend it on, but we don't want to spend it on certain things because we can get money from other means.
That's right.
Yeah, you got
It's a good, I guess we have a good problem this year.
It is a good problem.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
and furthermore, this is a Tony question. Of the ARPA funds distribution, how much of that falls to this group and how much of it falls to the Board of Selectmen? I'm assuming this doesn't go on the warrant.
None of
is this our responsibility?
No, none of it technically falls to this group.
Unless you needed additional funding.
Right. So the way I'm kind of bringing this group into the conversation is saying through our annual process of looking at our capital plan and discussing with department heads what their needs are for the upcoming budget, we are proposing to spend some ARPA funds instead of free cash on ABC item or split item D in half, you know. So, you know, Allison and I are kind of going through that analysis to decide how to kind of move money around effectively. Obviously, you can't, like we said, you can't use ARPA funds to put into reserves and to pay down debt. So for the efforts that we're making this year of increased expenditures to those two things, debt and reserves, that's going to come out of free cash, right? So then that means a capital expense that I might have paid with free cash, now I might shift and use ARPA funds for it. Because if I use free cash for it, that cuts from the amount I can put towards reserve.
Would we have the opportunity to prepay the tuition we owe to Swampscott or to Essex Aggie or the things that Tony was talking about earlier?
No, we would pay for that out of the general fund, and it doesn't become available until July 1. And I don't think there's any advantage to doing that.
So this doesn't go through the general fund at all. That's what I'm still struggling with. This is like almost like an off books.
It's a federal grant. So it's completely separate from the general fund and from appropriation. Yeah, the finance committee in the town doesn't vote on any type of federal or state grant.
Yes, yeah.
ARPA money is as I see it, is a federal grant to the selectmen,
Yeah.
right, Tony?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
so
don't, I don't know that we are limited to just things that appear in the warrant. I mean, it seems to me we would be remiss if, a fire truck suddenly appeared and it was never discussed as to how that thing got funded. So,
Hey, Bob, this is
So
Dana.
can
Well,
you move it?
it's happened twice already, Bob.
But,
well,
Last two fire trucks appeared,
All right,
you know,
so
and
can we
weren't voted
do,
on.
can we use it to build a firehouse?
we're not gonna get fired with 600 grand.
Yeah, that's the problem.
you might get one side, but hey,
And we use it to fund the study for the new municipal firehouse.
is it a municipal firehouse or is it a municipal public safety building?
Yeah, that's what. Yes.
The answer is yes, that would be an eligible expense. Right now, we are speaking with other towns that are going through that process. We're trying to figure out what the, how much money it would cost for us to get through step one of this process. Actually, step two. So a couple years ago, an assessment was done of the existing facilities. So how much money would it cost to bring that up to speed and then get us to the next phase of a conceptual project that you could bring to the people in town in the future to ask for borrowing to take to the next step. So what we don't want to do is ask for borrowing authority to spend, borrowed funds on an effort that, the people in town would never get behind, right? So you want to use either free cash or ARPA funds in this case to fund this effort. And we're trying to nail down how much that's going to cost. In the budget documents that we gave you, those numbers are not accurate and will be adjusted based on, our updated conversations.
so Bob, back to what you mentioned, can't the FinCom write their own article and put it into the warrant, say if we had a recommendation for some of these ARPA funds and then vote on it at the town meeting?
It's a good question. I would assume the FinCom could put in an article subject to all the usual rules for how an article gets inserted. So it needs whatever n number of signatures.
Yes, but now it's packed too late. That ends
But-
up being by the end of January.
Yeah, that deadline has passed.
I also it's the deadline's passed and it's a federal act that's dictating who has the authority to spend these funds. I don't know if a local,
Yeah,
I
that
don't
was
know
my
if a local vote would.
that was my question. What you said earlier, we might have an article, but we wouldn't have the authority to do that. The way you described it, it's the Board of Selectmen.
So is there anything else, Tony, in the budget that we could take out, spend ARPA funds on, and allow for more free cash? Because free cash
We can keep.
has more flexibility
Yeah.
to, I think you had mentioned something about, upgrades at the fire station or repairs to the fire station. Wouldn't that be a good place to spend the ARPA funds, take the money that we may allocate from FinCom and be able to put that into either free cash or pay down debt or whatever?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. What it takes is sitting down and kind of like moving the puzzle pieces. That's what Allison and I have been doing. And it's like, and every time you move it a little bit this way, how does that affect this? And so
Right.
the answer is yes. What our approach was, let's first list out all the capital needs, and
Right.
then let's try to do this and do that with it.
Okay.
So, I think that, even though you guys don't have a by rule role in this, I think that, myself, Allison, the Board of Selectmen are, happy to be as transparent as possible about what we're trying to do and be open to, recommendations and changes based on the conversations that we're having. I mean, our goal is, I think that we would all, knowing your group, I think Allison, myself, and the selectmen and all have the same financial mindset and goals. So I'm confident that we would end up in the same place. I think we would start with how much do we want to leave as a safety net, right? How much do we have left, and how much do we want to leave as a safety net to go forward from now till 2024? And then that's how much money we have to play with. And then how would you, move this to there and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and the worst thing that could happen is we let this expire.
Yeah,
Yes.
there are towns that haven't spent their CARES money, which was the first round of funds, yet. We don't want to be like that.
So we want to have a few last minute things lined, obviously keep some just in case between now and 2024, but we want to have a couple of maybe small quick hit items but as we get closer to that deadline, we can, kick those off and get them spent before they disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Peter, kind of to your point, if it becomes free cash, it's kind of the same effect. You can keep your buffer in as free cash rather than as
That's true.
ARPA funds.
Yep, that's true.
Well, I mean, we'll be going through this process again next year, and we'll
Yep.
have a new list of capital needs. And we can decide then if we want to pay for some of them out of ARPA, which would free up some free cash. And then we could use that extra free cash towards things you can't use ARPA for, such as reserves and debt.
Yep.
Can the ARPA money be used for a police cruiser?
Yes. I think we're using free cash for that now in the current budget.
But free cash we could carry over in reserve fund.
Say that
Yes,
again.
but we fund a cruiser out of it's a capital outlay item within the police budget, and that's funded through free cash. Historically, we funded it through free cash.
And Dan, I know you, and I'm not sure if it was, I think it was Barbara met with police and fire, or we're meeting with police and fire, and I know there's a rotation.
Well, we've met with both of them now. Yeah,
Okay.
Monday and Tuesday, we had really good meetings. Lots of information.
Yeah, and I know there's a really cool rotation that they do with the cruisers. Does it make sense? Again, we have, this ARPA money, buy a cruiser and add in another vehicle into rotation and maybe extend the life of the current cruisers. Just trying to think out of the box here.
Or do we get more bang for the buck with putting how much into free cash?
Right. Because
I think
and again, we're only going to be at the 5%, and you said at some point we should be closer to 10%. I mean, again, if we took that police cruiser out of the capital outlay, bought it with the ARPA money, we could take that extra money and put it into free cash. No? Or rainy day fund.
Everything you said, yes, is possible.
These are your puzzle pieces that you're working on right
Yes,
now.
yes, and we're probably making it worse.
There's a trickle-down effect. So I would say that, the the way that they rotate vehicles and the way that we have it set up in our budget is a very fiscally responsible way of doing things, and has never been an issue that needed to be like changed or solved. There are other capital needs that are pressing that have been put on the shelf because of, you know, other capital needs that were more pressing at the time. And because we had less available free cash, and we had no ARPA available to us. So with this extra free cash and ARPA, you know, this is a time where you can maybe spend a little bit more in the buildings and the infrastructure you have, get a little bit more life out of them, and start investing into the future, looking at, you know, a new public safety building, or, you know, 2 buildings, or whatever that study might recommend. So there are, you know, if you did that, Peter, then, you know, that's 60, whatever it is, $65,000 that you're not going to be able to use towards, you know, building the women's locker room in the police department, or,
Right.
you know, repairing the roof at the fires, you know, so there's a trickle down.
Yeah. I get it.
But, you know, it's not an easy puzzle. So I welcome, you know, any of you to sit down with Allison and I and kind of work through it, if you want to, if you care to spend the time.
Okay.
I'm good at puzzles.
Yeah, exactly. I love puzzles.
I did a bunch of them during COVID.
Yeah, I bet we all did in one fashion or another. I don't know how many games of cribbage I played against the computer during COVID. All right, are we done with this topic of pandemic relief for now? I'm sure we're going to revisit this one. All right, nobody's chiming in. So our next one would be, all right, so DeWitt, engineering for something about the, ask Tony. So, all right, so DeWitt is suggesting we may want to meet with Wright Pierce about the municipal building.
Yes.
Tony is shaking his head yes, and I'm kind of clueless on this whole thing, so.
One of the biggest articles that we're going to be facing this year is a major sewer infrastructure borrowing article that we have SRF, state revolving fund authorization for. We just need town approval, and a huge, you know, that it's going to take a large effort to educate the residents as to why it's important to vote yes for this article, and what it's going to do, and what position it puts us in. Meeting with Wright Pierce, our engineers, who are the engineers for the Linway sewer job. They just completed the assessment on the Ward Road pump station. They will be the engineers for the Willow Road force main. You guys should meet with them. They can come to a FinCom meeting, and they can basically answer any questions you have and kind of lay out the long-term plans and what this borrowing is for.
Okay. Do you have a sense for how many dollars in a huge?
So we have $17 million authorized under SRF that the town has not authorized us to borrow for yet.
Okay.
In speaking with,
And this 17 includes the existing Linway project.
$2 million, only $2 million of it includes the Linway project.
All right, so there's another 15 on top of that. Okay.
Yeah, we
12 to 17.
If you recall, we kind of talked about this last September, that we were applying for it and we would hear over the, by January.
Yep.
So we submitted an application, basically for costs associated with the Ward Road Pump Station, Willow Road Force Main, II issues, and the Causeway Force Main. If you, in speaking with the folks over at SRF, and because they were asking me, where are you guys, what are your plans for town meeting? And I said, I'm trying to figure it out because I feel like I've been talking about sewer borrowing at every single town meeting in the last 5 years.
I mean, you have.
You have, yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
What a legacy, Tony.
we keep going back. We play this like game of tennis of the town gives us the okay for X amount. Then SRF gives us the approval for more than that. Then we go and bid the project and it ends up being somewhere in between or more. So then I got to go back to town meeting for more authorization.
Yep.
So, what this puts us in a position to do is say, instead of coming back every step of the way here, we have 17 million authorized through SRF right now. If the town gives us the authority of 17 or even more, I mean, if I went to town and said, give me $20 million worth, again, I can only borrow up to what SRF has authorized me. That doesn't mean we're borrowing 20 million or 17 million tomorrow. That gives us the authority to borrow for these projects that are designed, these are planned over the next 5 to 10 years. And basically the way SRF works is it's like a construction loan. So as you spend money, you get reimbursed.
Yep.
And this is 0%?
No, but it's low interest, long term. Do you know,
Okay.
Allison, do you remember what the percentage was and compared to like what it would have been if we, borrowed on our own?
Yeah, it's 2.1%, and we were estimating at least a 5% cost, interest cost if we borrowed on our own.
So less than
Any
half.
decisions about public education on this, the details?
Um,
I mean, putting it in the warrant and putting it in the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, if you look at the book from September special town meeting, I wrote like a 1-page or 2-page kind of explanation on it. It's going to be similar to that, and then we will have multiple meetings ahead of, I will hold educational meetings ahead of time before town meeting that residents can attend, and we'll go through it all. As well as have Wright Pierce come to like Board of Selectmen meetings, FinCom meetings. It's going to be a robust public process.
Yes. I mean, my
Huge.
first reaction is asking for that amount of money, that in one big chunk for projects that are going to span a long lifetime, not just in 1 year. That may be a tough sell.
Benefit though is that we guarantee that 2.1% interest rate.
Yeah.
Where we don't know. I mean,
yeah.
Again,
So sorry, Peter, but you're going right down the right road. I think unintentionally is you're guaranteeing that 2.1% for the 17 million. So
Right.
SRF will, let's say we went to town meeting and said, okay, just give me authorization to borrow 10. SRF's going to take that as a signal that they can take the other 7 away from Nahant and potentially give it to somebody else.
right.
Yeah.
Tony, is Wright Pierce going to come to the Board of Selectmen with all this information? Could we have a combined meeting?
I was going to have them do both
Okay.
separately, but it could be combined. you guys are meeting every Wednesday night. The Board of Selectmen meet every other Wednesday, so, but our meetings can be long, so.
Okay.
Whatever you guys prefer. I wanted to offer them to come to, a meeting of yours. Maybe not next week because
FinCom meetings can be long too.
Thank
maybe
you.
not next week, but the week after, because next week is the Board of Selectmen meeting conflict. I'd like to be here when they connect with you.
Yeah, the other thing is an off-cycle meeting, joint meeting, and only because I know that some people watch the selectmen meeting. If you look at our listing tonight, it's not like a whole lot of people are watching our meetings. But I think if you literally announce the selectmen and the FinCom are meeting with the engineering company to talk about the sewer, the huge sewer project, I think it may entice more people to attend. And I think the biggest thing, I hate to say it, about this whole thing is it's all about marketing. If you can get, the more people you can get to understand and appreciate that, this appears to be a good decision, the easier it's going to be to sell at town meeting.
You got it. Well said.
I would, for this group, for those on this call, just letting you know, I mean, the minimum amount that we should, we can't budge, I would say, is 10 million. I mean, we estimate the Ward Road pump station to be anywhere from 4 to 5 million right now. I mean, there's a lot of contingency built in that, but because of the fluctuating costs and materials and everything, that would include cost for that. It would include the balance $2 million for the Linway job. It would set us up for the Willow Road force main, and it would give us extra funds to use towards II issues. The Nahant Causeway job, that's really like 10 years down the road that we really like, that where it starts to become a critical repair. So it's in pretty good shape. It doesn't have to happen very soon, relatively speaking. So I would say if we were gonna compromise on anything, I don't think we could go lower than 10.
But did I understand correctly that if we get 10 authorized, we lose the other 7K?
Right.
Correct.
Well, that's a good marketing tool right there.
Yeah, I would want to go for all of it.
Yeah.
And you lose the interest opportunity because interests are going up.
Right, 2.1.
Right. And just because we think that the causeway is going to last another 10 years, if we start having break issues in 5 years, we don't have to go through this process again. The monies are there.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I hate to, I'm not in favor of waiting for something to break.
Right.
Or hoping it won't. That has not really done us well.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Hope is not a strategy, not even in poker.
Right.
We've tried it before. It didn't work.
No, and from the folks, like I said, the folks at SRF said, we've never received as many applications as we did this past year. If you guys have 17 million, go ask for 20, because you never know if there's cost overruns or things of that nature. And, we kind of have the flexibility to give you an extra $1 million or 2 million, and then you won't have to go back to town meeting for it. That's what happened in this originally. So in September, I came for 3 million. I forget what it was, what we asked for, 3 million, right? So that we would have enough to cover the Linway job by using the previous borrowing, that borrowing, and leftover funds that we had borrowed on our own outside of SRF from in 2018. But then when we went to SRF and told them, they said, oh, we'll just give you your project's going to be 9 million. we'll just give you all 9 million to put the whole thing through SRF. And I'm like, why didn't you say that before? I would have asked for 4 million or 5 million at town meeting. So now they're saying, you know, you're better off going to the town asking for more than what you're authorized from us, because we can always come up to meet your authorization from the town.
Couldn't lowball our request from the town.
I was taking the soft approach, you know, and it ended up being the wrong one. So,
So Bob, when can we fit this into, when can we fit peer
Well, the
meet
lot,
them to
Yeah.
visit us?
I mean, the logical place would be on whatever night we cover water and sewer, and I do not have the schedule in front of me.
I would also like you to send it to me again, but what the hell?
I'd suggest the 23rd if it's doable.
But I think we can probably move some things around for this. So you're saying March 23rd?
Yeah. So your next meeting is the 16th, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So that we have a board of selectmen meeting that night. So the following Wednesday, the 23rd, would be a good night for it.
And on the 16th, we're having police.
Yeah. Lisa, and what else was on the 16th? I think it was supposed to be town government, but I had reckoned that without the selectmen's meeting.
Oh, right.
Tony, can I ask another question or make a statement? Town meeting is going to be outside on Flash Road, correct?
That's the current plan.
Okay, thank you.
So we're not required anymore, right?
End of May happens to also be graduations and stuff. So I'm just making sure that we can secure the contractors for it. It's as far as COVID goes, I'm not, overly concerned that we wouldn't be able to have the meeting in town hall. We still have a capacity issue of 450 people. So if I think that we're going to have anywhere around 400 or more, you know, it would probably it'd be a lot more comfortable outside at Flash Road.
It's a lot more expensive.
Last year was because we had 1,000 people.
Right.
This would be more like we had to have a bigger tent because we had to space chairs. We don't really have to space chairs out anymore, so we can have a smaller tent. This would be, I think it'd be similar to like the first time we did it outside in September of 2020. It was only it was a smaller tent, less chairs. So
Fewer people this year.
Hopefully.
It depends.
Shorter warrant.
Yeah.
It really isn't that much shorter of a warrant. I think there's like 32 articles on there right now. But it depends. Right now, there aren't really any major controversial issues on the warrant. Probably the most talked about issue right now is the 9 Little Nahant Road CPC article. So if that stays on there, it could bring more people. But it's possible that it doesn't. So
What is that article? I haven't looked at that one.
it's a long
Geez.
story.
Okay.
We save it for another night.
May I make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, there you go.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
No, well, I can't argue with it, but just in terms of scheduling, is there a selectman meeting on the 30th, Tony?
No.
So can I propose this with apologies in advance to the liaisons to fire? Austin, are you willing to meet with us next week? So can we move your March 30th meeting to March 16th?
And have police and fire on the same night?
Yeah. police and fire on the same night. We'll put general government onto the 30th. And that will hopefully free us up for the 23rd to meet with Wright Pierce.
And
Well, Austin
send the
had
schedule
originally-
to the committee, please.
Yes, I will.
Austin had
just-
originally said that you could do the 16th. And we had to switch it just today. So having fire and police on the same, that would seem to be a good plan in terms of freeing up.
Yeah, I thought I saw Austin in our meeting. That's why I
He's
was.
here.
Was
He's-
Yeah, he's,
There.
Yes, I can, I could do the 16th if that works better.
Thanks, Austin.
Awesome. So let's do that. We'll do police and fire next week on the 16th. The 23rd will be Wright Pierce and whatever else was scheduled there. And then we'll move general government out to the 30th into the slot that was freed up by the fire department. All right. I heard a motion to adjourn. No, we need to ask
No,
a
public forum.
public forum question.
Oh,
Any comments or questions from members of the public?
Do you guys have a preference of indoor or outdoor
for what?
for a town meeting?
Barbara mentioned the expense. Wasn't it 70,000 last year or something?
Yeah, well, last year was, I think
Right.
we had, so many people. So the year before, it was closer to like 30.
Can you use
Um,
ARPA funds for that?
Great question.
Actually, I could.
Done.
that's right, because you're holding it outside based on quote, COVID.
Go.
Okay, well,
Think outside the box. Think outside the tent.
I'd prefer outside, frankly, except that
Outside.
except for the cost.
Okay.
All right. I did not hear any questions from the public, so I do think a motion to adjourn is now in order.
So that was made by Bill Brown, seconded by Peter.
Yep.
So roll call.
Sahara, aye. We'll go backwards.
Okay.
Lauren, I.
Vanderslice, aye.
McMacken, aye.
She and I.
Brown eye.
Barba, I.
Beatty, aye. We didn't, Peter, we're
Oh,
gonna have to.
I'm
flip
sorry.
that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I jumped it too early. Hey,
It's
real
okay.
quick.
Get in there. That's all that counts.
Peter,
Yeah.
all of a sudden the world has changed because I was always the first bee
First-
and I'm so
yep.
used to being the head of any line and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
And my
In
spelling
elementary
has to change.
In elementary school, I was in the, I always had Mary Ambrose in front of me because of the A, and I was always in the second chair. So,
right.
Hey, real quick, I will not be on next week's meeting. I will actually be either in the air or just landing in North Carolina. Not quite as warm an environment as Judy is in, but heading south for a little warmth.
Nice.
Okay.
All right, we will carry on.
All righty. Thank
All
you.
right.
We are
a good
adjourned.
night.
Thank you all.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Bob.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Tony.